It's that time of week, Friday. That means it's time to deploy. I'm joined as always by Jim Pelletier. Jim, how was your week?
Yeah, really good, really good. Doing some fun stuff, planning for the new scale goals we've got, how we're going to get that out to customers, and then yeah, looking forward to the holidays as well.
Yeah, it's coming up. Always a rush to the finish, I guess, with Christmas
Yeah,
and whatnot. Everyone's pressing some deadlines there. So, anyways, this is the show, if you haven't seen it before, where we discuss the tech news relevant to Octopus Deploy over the week, show off some demos, highlight some things that are relevant to customers, etc. So, with that, let's go ahead and start with a sample project. So, this is a new item on our roadmap that we have recently shipped. So, this is all about helping customers have a better first run experience, that sort of golden path when running Octopus. And so, this is an item that's currently available up on our roadmap here. And as it articulates, basically, almost half of the trial users when they sign up are just, window shopping. They're just browsing, and when they do their 30-day trial, and so they don't really have a clear set of instructions on what to do. And so what we decided to do is help that with an experience, which I'd like to show you now. So when you sign up for the first time and you kickstart a trial, you'll see a dialog that looks like this. So you can start by creating a new project, or you can kick off a new sample project. So I'll walk you through the steps of what this looks like. You can also iterate through these steps here to see what these things are. But just to kind of show you here, if we kick off with a sample project, the first thing it's going to do is it's going to lay down, for lack of a better term, on disk, a project that also highlights some of the things in here. So first and foremost, it pulls up the dashboard. This is the one thing that most people cite when talking about Octopus. So the dashboard here lists your releases and your environments across the top, and will give you visibility across those releases. So that's the first thing worth noting. The second thing is it highlights the fact that you have three environments as part of this project. So we have development, staging, production. You can have as many as you would like and name them anything you want, basically, but these are the canonical three. And it describes why you define these things. So environments are basically there for you to do promotions, etc. The third step is defining a deployment process. So here it lays out that we have a package called sample package. This is like a binary, a zip archive, whatever it is, your application that you want to get to a list of one or more targets. You then may run some script. So that's what it's doing here. It's executing some scripted instructions. You can do a variety of other steps as well. We have over 600 or so steps that you can use. And then lastly, but not leastly, it sends an email. But more interestingly, it sends an email utilizing our Octo stash notation, which is a variable substitution. So this is a way in which you can actually get some really powerful and flexible deployment processes going. So that's the third step. The fourth step is talking about variables themselves. So we just highlight the fact that we have these variables. So now, if you wish, you can define these and also have them under different scopes. So variables come all shapes and sizes. You have plain text variables, you have sensitive variables, you have variables that list off accounts, etc. You also have scopes that define where those variables will be reused. So here you can see we have a variable here for app version. Utilizes our octo stash notation. Oops, I got a little bit redrawn. We then have multiple values for greeting message, which we can look up, and they have different scopes depending upon where they're running, and then other values are found here. So it's just kind of walking you through that set of stages. And then finally, runbooks. You wouldn't have a good environment for deployments unless you have runbooks, and so there are three that are provided out of the box with this sample project. Export a database backup, restart the web server, and then scale up a Kubernetes replica set. So these and other tasks you can run as a runbook. It's sort of akin to a deployment process, but it's oriented towards your ops team and is used in conjunction with other things as well. So just like you can parameterize your deployment processes through variables, you can do the same thing with runbooks, etc. So these are typical sort of routine tasks that you run over and over again. And that is, as they say, the new sample project walkthrough that we now have built in Octopus. So there you go.
that's pretty
Did you
cool.
learn something from this, Jim?
I definitely haven't seen that walkthrough experience before. I've been watching the sample project take shape, but that walkthrough is great. Really
Yeah,
hooping new people to
that's
Octopus,
awesome.
I reckon. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great because oftentimes people come and kick the tires, and I think unfortunately they come to the UI and they're like, I don't know what to do here. What do I do? And so a sample project to kind of highlight where to go. Very much an apt analogy to a mountaineer, sort of reaching base camp all the way up to the
Yeah.
summit is definitely the way to go.
I mean, really, they might not even have anything
Awesome.
to deploy or anything to deploy to. I think this actually can run if you run it, right?
It can, yes. Yep. So you can run these, you can deploy them because they're just basically running a script, basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just gives you a sense of what's there. And that's the newest item on our roadmap. Again, roadmap.octopus.com should be your homepage, if not a bookmark. And this is the new sample project experience we now have for new trial users. So there you go. We had some questions that came up in Reddit. This was on the PowerShell subreddit, which is a very popular subreddit, where a person here was writing about utilizing a combination of PowerShell in Octopus Deploy, and they were having trouble with variable substitution when calling curl. So what they wanted to do effectively was they wanted to pass arguments through to curl via PowerShell and then call it. The problem they were experiencing was that sometimes there was evaluation going on here with the username and password. There were certain characters that were being misinterpreted by PowerShell and or curl and or both. And
Right.
so what this person described was a little bit of a magic string here that basically tells PowerShell when you encounter the %, lexicon, PowerShell will see this and then basically not process or parse this. Now, the reason why I bring this up in the context of Octopus Deploy is because they're utilizing Octopus Deploy here for this. And then further down in here, there were some good points made. So, Fat Ed, I guess, is I don't know if these are usernames or these are real names. Sorry, I apologize. Don't pass a password as an argument like that. It's going to be logged all over the place. Not if you're using sensitive variables. So I keyed in here and I said, if you're using sensitive variables, these are masked in the logs. So that's an important distinction there. And so that I made sure that that was highlighted there and got into this whole sort of thread about how it was being used. But the main point of this post was just to highlight the fact that there's this sort of magic character that you can put into a PowerShell processing if you want to stop it from being processed. So I thought that was cool. And sticking with Reddit, this was another one on a subreddit, DevOps, another popular subreddit. And this person wanted to create monthly reports on data for our Octopus Deploy and Jenkins installation. So this is very common. We see this all the time with customers where they basically want to get a sense of how many deployments are kicking off, what is the status of certain projects, what are their environment status, et cetera, et cetera. And so out of the box, we do provide some of these reports in the form of insights, but it's a bit different than what this person is asking for. They're looking for the raw data. And so I came in here and I said, yeah, you can do this. You can do this in a number of different ways. Probably the default way of doing this is to access the REST API, pull down the desired data, and then throw it into a reporting tool. And those are the individual APIs themselves. The other way to do this is to hit our reporting API, which is available here. This is basically a bulk export in XML of pretty much everything you'd ever want to know about how your deployments are going. And then finally, I also offered the solution of maybe you could use the CLI, pipe the data as JSON, and put it into a file if you wanted to. We do have docs on this, and I just wanted to cite some of them. So there's some great articles that was written. This one was written by an Octopus insider, Jeff Taylor, who took Octopus data from that XML endpoint and created a Power BI dashboard. I've shown this in the past, but basically it's here's everything that you could possibly want to know about what's happening with the Octopus project. So you can see here, counted deployments by date and project. This is the years on the y-axis. We've got counted deployments by environment and project. Total deployments, succeeded, failed, yada, yada, yada. So lots of stuff there. And of course, we have to have the donut chart, always a popular option. So that's one option. And then some folks don't know this, but we actually have a Grafana endpoint data source that was written by Matt Casperson. He's a fellow employee here at Octopus. And so Matt here talks about integrating Octopus with Grafana. Grafana is a very powerful visualization tool. And so utilizing that data source allows you to pull that data in from Octopus via the XML endpoint. And then you can render it in a number of different ways. So Matt talks a little bit about how to do that, how to set it up, and then what you can generate at the end of the day for those types of things. So I just thought I'd mention it here because we get this question quite a bit. The last thing I wanted to mention was the fact that we actually have a number of client libraries that you can use. So the one that most folks will know is this one, the Octopus clients. This is the C# API client library. But we also have a Go client library. This is used by the Terraform provider. And we also have one in TypeScript. This is actually used by our GitHub Actions. So these are three different libraries that you can use in three different languages if you want to pull that data out. And yeah, I just thought that would be interesting to mention here in the context of Deployment Friday. So that was two subreddits I was kind of watching and seeing what was going on there. So there you go.
Nice. Been trolling Reddit.
I know. Come on. We've had a couple of videos posted to the YouTube channel recently. So this was a partner webinar that was done with DevTools. This was done with Rob and folks from the DevTools vendor. And so they talked about strategies for an efficient release pipeline. And they went through all the sort of nuts and bolts of, why you want to look at release pipelines, what are some of the things that are important, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a video that we have there. And then another video that we have is our recent 101. This was from myself. I did this earlier this morning at 4 a.m. But basically, I was doing another kicking of the tires, so to speak, of what Octopus is all about, how it works, et cetera, et cetera. So lots of stuff there. And you can check that out. If you're looking for a video on what is Octopus, how does it work, and more importantly, why you should use it, this would be a good video to check out. So that's, again, up on our YouTube channel as well. Awesome.
4 a.m.
Sorry?
4 a.m.
Yes, I know, 4 a.m. Well, hey, I know. I have to get up sometimes pretty early. So before I get into some of the industry news I want to cite, I did want to highlight our blog. So we have a few blog posts that have recently been published. So the first one is with Anton Zagenbelny. I apologize. This is from he's the CTO and co-founder of Stig, and they're a vendor, an ISV in Israel, and they do headless pricing and packaging platform provider. And so this was another Inside DevOps interview that we did with Anton. And then another article, which I think is going to matter to a lot of folks who are utilizing Octopus, is this one here entitled Deprecations Coming in 2024. So Rob Erez talked a little bit about, hey, kind of waving the flag of, these are things that we're going to be deprecating. And so just wanted to highlight a few of these. Some of these make sense to me, a lot of sense. Like Windows Server 2003, probably a good idea for us to deprecate this. It is quite old. The reasons for that obviously speak to the fact that it requires .NET Framework, et cetera, et cetera. .NET Framework 4.6, et cetera. So that's part of the reason. And if we have to keep these things around, it just makes our lives harder. So, and when we look at the logic and the logic behind this and the analytics that we see for targets, et cetera, it makes a lot of sense. So dropping those workloads is going to make sense. Mono, the very pervasive runtime by Miguel Diacaza and friends. This is basically allowed us to do deployments to Linux. That was obviously before we had .NET Core, and so Mono is being deprecated as if you're running any Linux targets, Mono is being deprecated as part of this. So that's something to be aware of. Azure Cloud Services, we added this in 2013, but as the world has moved on, this has actually been retired by Azure themselves, and so this is something that you obviously need to think about. F#, the functional language from Microsoft, relying on .NET. This is a scripting. This is what we support as part of our run script steps, etc. This is language support within there, and so we never saw high adoption rates for this, so it makes sense for deprecating this. Future deprecations, these are things that we're planning on. Windows Server 2008. Script CS, this is a very sort of C# based scripting language. This was done, I believe, by the ASP.NET team at one point. And then we mentioned this last week, but the Octo CLI. We have a new CLI that we have available called Octopus as opposed to Octo. And that is something that we're also deprecating in the longer term. So these are deprecations to think about in 2024. Any surprises here on your end?
None from me. When you look at the actual support behind a lot of the things we're deprecating, often it's not even really us deprecating it. Some of that stuff was 20 years old. Yeah. I think people are going to enjoy that. It's going to make the product a leaner, meaner beast in the end of the day, right? Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. Awesome. So, a couple of blog posts. There you go. Let's move on to some of the industry news, and we'll just wrap it up here. So, this was a post update from the GitHub team. Of course, we use GitHub all the time, so we're always keen on what they're adding. From macOS runners to secure deployments, what's new from GitHub Actions? So, a bunch of stuff in here. So, first and foremost, Apple Silicon powered M1 macOS runners. This was something that was known to us, obviously, and they beta tested this, and now it's official. They also have requiring workflows with repository rule sets. So basically, enforcing policy at scale. So that's when you're running these workflows, you want to make sure that they're within compliance, and you can dictate those using a combination of tools. But this is important if you're managing this across your GitHub repos. Keep your deployment secure with new continuous deployment features. So these are things that obviously are these are things that we were well aware of. These were announced, I think, at the last GitHub Universe. Deployment protection rules. So this is something that if you're doing a deployment, if you're keying off a deployment within GitHub Actions, which has this capability, there are rules associated with that. New dashboard views for deployments across environments. Now, the notion of environments and deployment rules, they're not as complex. They're not as mature, I should say, and nuanced and powerful as the ones we have in Octopus. We think of those as far more mature. We have a far more mature model than what is available in GitHub, which is why we say better together, GitHub plus Octopus as opposed to GitHub or Octopus. But there's a new dashboard view available there. A bunch of other features as well. I don't think you'll find the experience quite as nice. I mean, these are mostly just text and checkboxes that, it's the common sort of GitHub experience that you see. So, if you use a tool like Octopus, I'm not trying to persuade you otherwise, but, if you use a tool like Octopus, you get the dashboard, you get to see these things actually qualified within the dashboard. So it does give you some niceties there. And then finally, more secure GitHub hosted runners. This speaks to the fact that there are a variety of things that you want to do, whether it's connection to a VNet hosted in Azure or other things like that. These are things that will reduce the attack surface area of runners, which is obviously a primary target for crypto miners and things like that. So there you go. So lots of stuff coming from GitHub and GitHub Actions, which is great. We're big fans of GitHub and GitHub Actions, so check that out. CD Foundation recently announced that cdCon 2024 is going to be in Seattle, April 2024, 16th and 18th, and their call for proposals is now open. So if you have a session topic that you'd be interested in, you can go ahead and submit a talk. I would imagine I will submit a presentation here, so there you go. And then finally, this was a blog post that was also posted on the CD Foundation site. This is for a protocol spec called CDEvents. CDEvents is something that I've kept an eye on for a while. And what it does is it basically defines a protocol where vendors who do continuous delivery can actually write events to a common specification. And then that allows broader adoption. So this is an update to that. There's a lot of work going on behind the scenes about this. And so the thing I liked about this is that they're providing the motivation as to why they would do this. The events that are defined as part of this protocol are these ones here. So you have things like core events. So an example might be pipeline run started. And then you have things that are relevant to potentially Octopus. So continuous deployment events. So these are events related to deploying services to target environments. And then you get an endpoint or event that's called service deployed. So these are a common sort of protocol. And the reason why you do this is for integration. So if you're defining a protocol and everyone adheres to that protocol, it allows you to integrate and swap things out more easily as part of a pipeline. And pipelines don't live in a vacuum. They typically bring in various parts and pieces. And so here's an example of what a JSON payload would look like in the context of an event. So this is a pipeline run has started, and the name of the pipeline and the URL for that pipeline and the event source itself. And then you can see other events as part of that. So these are what these things look like. This is actually how it runs, and this is kind of how you would stitch these together. And so this was a really cool article, I thought, to highlight some of the scenarios around this. And this is a common scenario that we see at Octopus Deploy. So believe it or not, when you actually are looking at the steps available as part of the Octopus Deploy library, so you go to library.octopus.com, you'll see all the community templates that we have, step templates available. And there are two in particular that people like a lot. I don't know why it's just taking so long to load, but they're Slack and Teams. Slack and Teams you find at the bottom of everyone's deployment process. And so this is a common scenario where you want to notify folks like, hey, something's just happened. We've just had a deployment. So that's why Slack is typically cited as an example for these types of events and other events as well. So there you go. So that's CDEvents and an update on where they're at.
Yeah, that'd be super handy, wouldn't they?
That's right. Well, it's not like you can't get that information from Octopus today. I mean, we have our notification system, right? You can set up notifications or subscriptions rather for notifications that way. We have our whole audit log. You can obviously query our API. You get status. You get server task IDs that you can query as well. But this is that's Octopus specific, right? This is a protocol. This is a specification that defines that across. It's sort of vendor neutral. So CDEvents is that specification. So there you go. That wraps up the week. A demo, some blog posts, and some talk about CDEvents. That was pretty impactful. So there you go. Awesome.
Nice one.
Anyways, if you've stumbled... Sorry, what's that?
I said nice one.
Yeah. So if you've happened to stumble across this video for the first time, feel free to like and subscribe. We'd love to see you watch these videos. If you have a topic that you would like us to talk about, feel free to submit a comment. But until next time, we'll see you here next week on Deploying Friday. Take care.